On today's show, the Ravens have been gifted a golden opportunity to add the final piece to their secondary and honestly, their team. We talk about that, injury strike at OTAs, and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire. We are here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, and in audio form where you can follow along and subscribe as well. We're 5 days a week here on Locked On Ravens, Monday through Friday, bringing you that daily Ravens coverage. We also have some bonus episodes over the weekend. We had 2 of those this past weekend, so be sure to check those out. Also, we go live after every Ravens game and after every Ravens piece of big news. And thank you to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle of those two, thank you for tuning in and your support as well. Here with us today to talk Ravens football on this Taco Tuesday, it is Sam Njoku of the Ravens Talk podcast. And Sam, final week of Ravens OTAs kicked off yesterday. We have some injuries to talk about, and we also have to talk about a golden opportunity the Ravens have been presented with to potentially add the final piece of the secondary, a guy that you and I have been talking about for a really long time now.
And very recently as well. I mean, up until Friday, we were talking about Jaire Alexander potentially being available for the Ravens. And lo and behold, on Monday, it was announced that Jaire Alexander is available, having been released by the Green Bay Packers. So, yeah, it's I guess I'll pat myself on the back a little bit because I called it. I think it was just a perfect storm. Too quiet over there in Green Bay Packers camp. I was trying to get as much information as I could, and I didn't get much, which told me that things weren't going the way the Packers thought, and Alexander is now available for a team, hopefully maybe even the Ravens.
Yeah, seems like he will probably be looking for a one-year prove-it deal. I'd be pretty shocked if he would go out there and fetch a multi-year offer. Maybe a team is desperate enough to give him that, but I'd assume the one-year variety is what Jaire Alexander is going to be looking at. So, yep, Jaire is gone from Green Bay, a new era for him. And speaking of new era, Lamar Jackson, very familiar with Jaire Alexander. Obviously, the two played together at Louisville. The two still close. Lamar had a tweet back last offseason about Jaire Alexander saying, hey, slide to the Ravens. Come on over to the Ravens. So I know Lamar is all on board with this, but this is a golden opportunity, Sam. The Ravens, do they need Jaire Alexander? If they don't get Jaire Alexander, are their Super Bowl chances squashed? Of course not. They can win a Super Bowl with or without Jaire Alexander. The roster is good enough. But you can never have enough depth. We'll get to some of the injuries the Ravens suffered in OTAs in the second part of the show. And we'll dive into them a little bit here in the first part of the show as well. But you don't want to be in a situation you were in last year where, let's just go back to safety. You exhausted every single option, and you threw that Hail Mary up at the last second, and it worked with our Darius Washington moving into the lineup, them moving guys in and out. You don't want to be in that same position. So for Jaire, I know a lot of people will say, hey, the Ravens don't need that guy, which is true. They don't need him. But if you can get an insurance policy, and calling Jaire an insurance policy is wild concerning how good he is, but the injuries over the past 2 years have spoke from themselves. So how do you feel like a fit would work between Baltimore and Jaire at this point?
I think it would be amazing. I mean, I try to find the negatives to potentially signing him, and there are negatives. I mean, he's missed 20 of the last 36 games in the last 2 seasons, so he has missed a considerable amount of time as the starter. But that's where the buck stops in terms of criticism. I mean, he's just a phenomenal corner, physical for his size. He just does a great job. He'll just make life difficult for opposing offenses. I mean, you know what the Bengals are going to do those 2 games that they play in 2025. They're going to target Oestreicher. They're just going to target him because they're not going to throw it to Nate Wiggins. They're not going to throw it to Marlon. They haven't been able to do so the last 2 seasons, in my opinion. So Oestreicher will be the guy that you would target. And having Jaire Alexander replace him in that spot really makes life difficult. I mean, you're really asking yourselves, how are we going to throw the football? So I think it will be a great fit. Do they need him? No, they don't necessarily need him. But, and I thought about this a lot, he will be a nice insurance policy, not only for 2025, but for 2026, when the Ravens will have a decision to make regarding Marlon Humphrey, who just had some years voided on his contract, didn't sign an extension, So that means that there's a chance it can move on from Marlon Humphrey in 2026. Now, this is all just speculation at this point, but just based on the way the contract's looking, you could have a situation where you have Jaire Alexander replacing Marlon Humphrey in 2026 and beyond. So lots of things to look ahead to for the EDC and company as far as the future of the Ravens roster. But as of this moment right now, Jaire Alexander is a luxury, and a luxury that's attainable. As you mentioned, 1-year deal most likely coming for Alexander. That's something that the Ravens could work with.
And this is, I think, Sam, a pretty rare situation where a player of this caliber hits the market this late in the offseason. I know post-June 1 cuts are a thing. The Packers felt like they were trying to work out a lower deal. There were reports that there were offers back and forth. The Packers made an offer. Jaire balked at that, and essentially they couldn't come to an agreement. And the fact that you can get a player like this who is this good for a bargain, whatever it was, I mean, it's a rare opportunity for the Ravens to get a whole heck of a lot better when they already are so good in the secondary. But, you know, mentioning the injuries and the games missed for Jaire, it's not the same exact situation as DeAndre Hopkins here, Sam. But what I've talked about with DeAndre, and I know you and I have had this conversation, the two of us, is DeAndre in a lesser role, managing snaps, will probably keep him healthier, keep him fresh, and allow him to work to his skill set. With Jaire, he wouldn't come into Baltimore expecting to be like the only good corner on that roster. The Ravens already have multiple great corners, all pro level. Now, Jaire would form the most disgusting three-headed monster we've seen at that position in a while. But if you're able to manage his snaps a little bit more and put him not like a third down specialist, but just not have him play a full complement of snaps in a season, I think that could help him stay healthy, which in turn helps the Ravens because he stays on the field for him, which is the big concern right now with Jaire.
Yeah, I mean, you would love to keep Jaire Alexander on the field as much as possible, but yeah, I think the Ravens would like to take that approach, probably limit his snap counts. First of all, just get him acclimated to the defense. I mean, you have somebody in Awuzie who's been in here a little bit longer. If they indeed sign Alexander, Nate Wiggins, a year under his belt, Marlon Humphrey, veteran, plenty of years. So they might take that approach. Let's ease him in here a little bit. Maybe give him in some sub packages for the first part of the season and get it acclimated to the defense. I can see something like that. Obviously, if you're going to sign him, it's going to be for a 1-year deal. Who knows how incentive laden that contract is? So it may behoove Jaire to play more. But again, those injury concerns are very real. Again, missed the last 20 games over his last 2 seasons. That's a lot. That's over 50% of his games missed. How much money are you paying? How much time and effort are you putting to implementing him to your defense? Oh, and another thing, Jaire doesn't really play the style of football that the Ravens are having their corners play. So it'll be a little bit of shifting how you play on defense. And listen, I'm not worried about that. I think Zachary Orr will be able to do that and accommodate Jaire to make sure that he's playing his best. But another thing to think about as far as where Jaire will go, this may not be the most suitable position for his skill set, but I still think, in my opinion, it's the best situation to be in because it's the defense that is definitely built for a championship. He's the missing piece, for sure.
We have seen the Ravens also, quote unquote, revive careers where Jaire's stock right now is down because of the injuries. It's not a question of his talent. That talent is there. But if Jaire is looking to prove it here, maybe cash in on one more huge payday in his career, a place like Baltimore could very well be the place to do it because we've seen many different examples of that happen for guys. And Jaire is 28 years old right now, so he will still have an opportunity to get a payday or two before his career ends, depending on how long he plays. The Ravens in their secondary, we saw the shift that they had last season. We saw guys step up in that secondary. You can never have enough. And we're not talking about Jaire coming in here and signing a $20 million per year, 1-year contract. You know, I don't know what that's going to look like. Do you, Sam, have any inkling of what you project Jaire to sign at this point?
I'd say probably in the teens, somewhere maybe a 1-year, $15 million contract, maybe less considering where he goes. Maybe he really wants to go to Baltimore. He'll work out a deal and get that done. Or maybe somebody like the Eagles who just won a championship, he'll probably work it in to try and get his stock as high as possible for 2026. But yeah, I don't think it'll be $20 million. I think that's kind of crazy. That'll severely hamper the cap of whoever he goes for. So I say in the teens, maybe $10 million. That'd be great too. But obviously it's going to be a low number because you couldn't get something resolved with the Packers. So I don't think it'll be too much to get him into your football team if you have the cap space.
Now, speaking of cap space, Brian McFarland, Ravens salary cap, who knows all things Ravens salary cap. He is the guy to go to for any salary cap Ravens information. He says, for those asking about Jaire Alexander, the Ravens presently have 18 million cap space, but after taking their future expenses into account, they have around 5 million in effective or usable cap space for signings. Now, Brian also notes they do have extension or restructure options that could create that additional cap space. And, obviously, Sam, we have talked about that, most namely Lamar Jackson. So there are options and opportunities, but it does feel like if the Ravens want a true shot at getting Jaire, they will have to get a couple of those extensions done, because I guess they technically do have the cap space right now, but you also have to factor in, like Brian said, practice squad, maybe other signings. But Jaire is right in front of the Ravens. Will they take the opportunity? We will see. But coming up, we'll round out our conversation about Jaire and also talk about the injuries that the Ravens suffered at OTAs on Monday. So stay tuned. Plenty coming your way on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. I certainly have. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Now, Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever, and I love this aspect of Monarch Money because you can track shared and personal accounts. You can also set goals and stay on the same page without the stress. And when I started using Monarch, I realized how much I was spending on things I had no idea I was spending so much money on. But now with Monarch, I'm able to budget smarter and save more. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com, 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Again, that's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Back here on Locked On Ravens with Sam Njoku, I am Kevin Oestreicher. Sam, Jaire Alexander's there for the taking. The Ravens, everybody's kind of putting two and two together and naming him a possible option for them. The Ravens have been named a landing spot potentially, but there are other players that maybe could fit that bill. It's not just Jaire Alexander who is out there or on the trading block. We talked about it before the show. I call these guys the Triple J's. And for those who watch basketball, this is not Jaren Jackson Jr., who is referred to as Triple J. I'm talking about Jaire, Jalen, and Justin. Jaire Alexander, Jalen Ramsey, Justin Simmons. So I want us to rank these guys in terms of the order that you feel like they could help the Ravens, and maybe realisticness in there if you feel like putting that in there too. All three guys have their pros and cons. All three guys are at different points in their careers. Would you be okay with any of them, and how would you rank them?
I would be okay with all of them. How would I rank it? I got to put Jaire in one. Take away the injuries, Jaire is a top 5 cornerback in this league, which is insane considering that he's likely to sign a 1-year extension. A 1-year contract whenever he decides to sign with the team. Number 2, I'd put Jalen Ramsey. I think Jalen Ramsey gets a lot of flack for what he does for the Ravens or, whatever NFL team he goes to as far as his ability to play. I think that he still can play good football. I think he's ranked in the top 15 as far as corners go, according to Pro Football Focus. I think that he would be a great addition to this roster as well. I think he needs to make that transition to safety eventually to really take advantage of his skill set, but he's a guy who I can see the Ravens picking up. The only knock on him would be I don't think he'll sign a 1-year deal. I think he's going to look for a 2 or 3 year deal if and when he does decide to sign for any team. I know he's going to get traded. Most likely they're going to look for that, but I think he's going to be in the same lines as Jaire Alexander, where I think they'll cut him before they trade him. I don't think anybody's going to really take on that contract. And the 3 is Justin Simmons, who I really like as well. I think he might be the most important piece for this defense, considering the injuries that we have, and also just being able to complement what Malaki Starks and Kyle Hamilton does very well. I think he's the 3rd best of the bunch, but I think he may be the most important option for the Ravens moving forward, and we'll see what happens in the offseason as it tolls down to training camp.
And again, this could drag on for a little bit. Obviously, Jaire will probably evaluate his options. Same thing with Justin Simmons here. And for Jalen Ramsey, I know that everybody does have him kind of penciled in going back to Los Angeles at this point, but there are still other options for him as well. And the reason that, we're bringing up all these options for the Ravens to sign in the secondary and bringing up Jaire and these guys in the first place is because at OTAs on Monday, the Ravens had a couple of secondary injuries strike. Now, Sam, we obviously know about our Darius Washington, done for the majority, if not the full year, with that torn Achilles. Well, the Ravens, they lost Beau Braid during practice on Monday, and the report here from Jeff Zrebiec of The Athletic said that for Beau Braid, he went down where he couldn't put much weight on his leg as he was helped off by a trainer. Cordell Woodland said that it looked like a lower body injury, which kind of lines up. Now, Jonas Schaefer of the Baltimore Banner said he could put weight on both legs, but with Jeff saying, not much, probably meant that, maybe there was a little bit of weight that he could put on, but maybe there was a heavy limp. He was helped off by the trainers. That's tough. And then Cordell also mentioned that Chidobe Awuzie suffered an injury. Looked like it was an ankle for him, but Cordell said that looked less severe. Man, Sam, it is June. We need to stop with this. We cannot deal with this already in June. That would be 3 injuries in the secondary now. Cordell says that the Awuzie injury didn't look as serious as Beau Braid's, which I guess is good and bad news. Good being didn't look as serious, but the bad news being that maybe Beau Braid's is a little more serious. What do you kind of make of this? Because with our Darius down, everybody was talking about, we've talked about how Beau Braid was a good option internally. And now you could be looking at another guy who the Ravens might have to replace here.
This is a warning and also a reminder to fans out there. You are not 100%. You are not loaded on any position because you are 1 injury away from being in desperate trouble. That's why you need to load up on corners and you need to load up on defensive edge rushers. That's the name of the game in this league. And now you see, Darius Washington, we already know is out. Beau Braid, injured. We don't know the severity. Hopefully he'll be back. Awuzie doesn't seem to be that serious, but who knows? That's why I tell fans, hey, if there's a guy out there that you could potentially go and grab to improve your football team, you go get him. I'm sure Eric DeCosta feels the same way. This is just a reminder of that. Hopefully, again, doesn't look like Beau Braid did anything too serious. We'll see how much time he takes to get back on the football field. Same with Awuzie, but this is a reminder. I know it's June. It sucks, but injuries are a part of the game, and we've seen this time and time again. Plenty of years. I think 2014, the dreaded year where so many corners were out for the Ravens. A brutal stretch where the Ravens looked like they were poised to win a championship. You don't want to find yourself in that situation, especially with this roster currently. It's too loaded for you to make those mistakes. So, unfortunate situation. Hopefully those 2 guys are okay. But that should be a reminder that you do not hold back on bringing a guy in just because you think you're loaded on a particular position.
Man, you just had to bring up 2014, didn't
I know,
you?
you
That was, and I'll say it again, my all-time year that they should have won the Super Bowl. 2011, I know, with Lee Evans, Billy Cundiff, but that 2014 year, being up 14 twice on the Patriots in New England, blowing that lead. They had you and I out there playing corner, like you said, because they suffered so many injuries. That was the year. That was the year. The Ravens, I actually asked this question maybe a week or so ago, maybe 2, about how, the Ravens have won 2 Super Bowls in their franchise history, but how many have they actually left on the table? Oof. It's, you could talk about like 2006. You could talk about, obviously 2014, 2011, in the Lamar Jackson era, 2019, 2023, 2024. I mean, it's up there. Like, the Ravens have had opportunities and loaded rosters, loaded defenses, loaded offenses, and 2 Super Bowls still is a really good amount to show for it, especially with the Ravens coming into 96. But he's just like, they had a couple more opportunities to do it, and they just couldn't get the job done.
At least 3. 2006 for sure. 2014 for sure. 2023 for sure. 24 and 2019, you can make a case. 2019, they were just doing something entirely different, and you were just hoping somebody, if you're an opposing team, obviously, hoping for a way to stop it, and Titans find a way to stop it. But, yeah, 2006 and 2014, 2023, those 3 years, I thought for sure they were winning the championship. And I think I'd put 2014. I'll put 23 at the top. 23, I think, was the big one. And then 2014, followed by 2006. Those 3 in that order were, probably could have got 5. Probably could have got 5.
They were on such a roll, too, in 2023. And, this is an entirely different conversation, but it's just the way the Ravens start slow in these playoff games, especially recently, where, Buffalo in 2024 last year, we knew what happened there. But, the Chiefs and the Ravens, that game did not technically start very slow. I mean, it was 7-0, 7-7, 14-7, and the Ravens, they definitely thought, man, this is about to be like a 34-31 game. and they psych themselves out and they don't run the ball. And it's just those moments you look back on. Look at us, Sam. We're just reliving all the horrible Ravens playoff tragedies here
in June, sir.
While talking about tragic injuries in June. So we need the season to come so we can actually talk about where the Ravens are this year. And in OTAs, we'll get into that in the final part of the show. But I want to ask you one more thing before we head into that about these injuries, particularly with the safety position now. Because, let's say that Bo Braid has to miss some time, and, I'll knock on wood here that he does not and he's okay. But, now you're down to Kyle Hamilton, Malaki Starks, and Sanusi Kane. We've also mentioned Lamar Davis is taking more reps at safety. Do you feel like they would just trust a guy like that and maybe not bring somebody in? Or do you feel like if Ardarius and Braid have to miss significant time, you almost have to get somebody in the building?
I think you got to get somebody regardless. I mean, the safety position ruined their championship hopes in 2024. I just totally believe that. There's so many games that they lost. Could have got them some home field advantage, especially in the divisional round. That Bills game is in Baltimore. Had they win just one game that was caused by a lack of play from the safety group, I can't risk it, especially right now where, the Chiefs are still the Chiefs. The Bills got better. The Bengals, even though you think they didn't do much to protect their defense, they did get, Shamar Stewart in the first round. They did bring back T. Higgins, so they're a threat. The Steelers got Aaron Rodgers. Make of that what you will, but I mean, you can't risk losing these games early because you have faith in, Sanusi Kane or, Jalen Armour Davis that's never played the position. It's too much. Get your guy, go get Justin Simmons, get somebody else in safety that you trust to be there opposite Kyle Hamilton and Malaki Starks, because you cannot be in the situations where you have Kyle Hamilton back there and you lose the teeth of your defense again. Turnovers are huge in the postseason. Ravens didn't have any turnovers in the postseason. They haven't had a chance to get turnovers. They need that, what they had in 2012 with that defense. Get those turnovers and help that offense put points on the board.
Yeah, and I don't care if they want to trust their young guys. Like if they believe in Sanusi Kane and they believe Jalen Armour Davis can make an impact at safety, or, Bo Braid's able to come back, that's fine. But to your point, it's like you have to just have the option. Yeah. You have to have the option. I mean, we saw last year they didn't have enough options, and we thought that they planned for it. Now, nobody planned for Marcus Williams being as bad as he was, and Eddie Jackson being a negative liability. Still, by the way, one of the worst games I've ever seen a safety play was that Cleveland game. That was just a horrible game in general. We're going to just forget that even happened. Yeah. But you need to have options where if you want to give the young guys the first crack at it, then that's fine. So then you just bring in a lesser type of option, maybe not a Justin Simmons or Julian Blackmon or Jalen Ramsey, move him to safety. Sign a guy to a vet minimum, and bring him in. Just have him. You can even keep a guy on the practice squad and call him up. Have the Daryl Worley of this 2025 team. Call him up, cut him, sign him, call him up, cut the whole 9 yards there. But to me, I think it's important to give yourself the option, because if you don't and things go south, whether it be due to inexperience, poor play, or more injuries, you're putting yourself behind the eight ball, and you're doing that in a year where, I'm not saying they have to win a Super Bowl, but they kind of have to win a Super Bowl. Like it's kind of both ways, where it's Super Bowl or bust for them because of where they are, how talented they are. And you would hate to see that same story, like you said, Sam, play out like it did last year, where that safety group cost them a lot of games until they threw up that Hail Mary, and they were luckily able to figure it out. Coming up in the final part of the show, we'll dive into OTA recap from Monday. We'll not add the injuries into that part. We'll talk about the play on the field. So stay tuned. Lots to dive into here on the show. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher and Sam Njoku chopping it up with you on this Taco Tuesday. Sam, the Ravens will wrap up OTAs this week. 4 straight days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Mandatory minicamp will kick off next week, and then we get that little hiatus before training camp starts. And as we've said for months now, it's going to sneak up on you. So you gotta be prepared for it. But I want to take a look at some of the practice notes from OTAs on Monday. We talked about the injuries, but Ryan Mink over at Baltimore Ravens.com put out some notes I want to talk about. Shout out to Ryan. TJ Tampa had an impressive interception on a third down the seam from Cooper Rush. He was trying to find Charlie Kolar. Now, apparently this ball was actually a bit behind TJ Tampa, but he reached back for the interception. He also had a breakup in the end zone later in practice. That's someone that we've mentioned on and off throughout this show, but that's someone that you and I have mentioned a lot over the past couple of weeks. We've talked about someone who could truly make an impact, maybe even surpass Chidobe Awuzie by the end of the season if it all goes well for him. I'm super excited to see TJ Tampa, obviously an injury-riddled rookie season, but the guy has all the skills. We talked about it even last year when he was drafted. He was one of the steals of this draft across the entire league and already making an impact, the stuff you really like to hear.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've been talking about TJ Tampa even before this, so not too much of a surprise, but it definitely helps reaffirm our beliefs that TJ Tampa is a quiet player that a lot of fans outside of Baltimore are going to be surprised when they hear his name called 3-4 times this season. I mean, he's just, the skill set's there. So, I mean, I'm not going to delve too much into it, but if the training staff, the coaching staff of the Ravens gets this guy ready, he is going to be a force. As you mentioned it, potential guy to replace Awuzie if and when the time comes, a young guy that they can bring in and, just get ready. I think he just needs reps. And it's all about reps at this stage in your career. You want to get the reps. You want to get the practice in. So he's getting it. He's showing out. You said it was behind him. He was able to make a acrobatic play. That's a huge thing. And not a lot of DBs have in their arsenal to be able to maneuver their body to make a play like that, even though the ball's behind them. So let's get to see. I think TJ Tampa has, sky's the limit for this guy. So we'll see what happens, but definitely a guy to look out for if you're a Ravens fan.
Yeah, really good to have that depth and a player that could really break out this season. We talked about Rashod Bateman making an impact right after he signed his extension on Thursday. Well, he also was able to do a lot on Monday during practice. He had several nice grabs, according to Ryan, that were over the middle. He had a big game between the hashes on the first play of 11-on-11 practice here. He was not the only receiver making waves. And Sam, we talked about him last week as Mr. LeJounte Wester. He made the best catch of practice, according to Ryan. He dove the hole in a pass over the middle, had a defender on his back, apparently. So LeJounte making plays and making impacts. And this is a guy that, you said he has the skill set you've been dreaming of since Marquise Brown. Not just going to be a returner in my eyes. I think there are specific packages you can have him in. Like we said, I am all on board with LeJounte Wester hype train, and I'm glad to know that you are too.
Yeah, I heard some Ravens fans on social media not too fond about this Wester take, but I'm telling you, he just has that skill set. And he has skills that, even surpasses what Hollywood Brown can do. Hollywood Brown's, a straight line speed guy, but this guy has some agility to him. He's definitely a guy that the Ravens are going to have in their arsenal come 2025, the regular season starting. So don't be surprised by it. But yeah, good to see that he's making these spectacular catches. Good to see that he's not letting his size dictate how well he performs on a football field. Is he a finished product? Not by any stretch of the imagination, but he has that initial skill set that the Ravens are going to use in certain packages come game day to really push this opposing defense back and keep the running lanes open for Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson to make plays.
And it is something they have missed. They had Keaton in that role a little bit in 2023 before his injury. Zay, I'll never forget Sam Todd Monken just spamming Zay during his rookie season over and over and over behind the line. And it just would work maybe one time. And Todd's like, all right, 10 more tries. Let's just do it. And so I'm glad that he moved away from that a little bit last season. But now you have that guy you can use in those packages. You can even put Keaton and LeJounte in these packages at the same time and do misdirections and force a defense to follow these guys around. This is year 3 of Todd Monken. He is acclimated to these guys. He is getting more weapons to use. I'm really excited about that. And I'm also really excited about other rookies in this class. Ryan says that Malaki Starks ended up crashing down to break up a short pass that was intended for Isaiah Likely. And Malaki Starks also had some pretty high praise for Isaiah Likely, calling him the toughest cover so far for him during OTAs. He said that he was a lot faster than he looked on TV. So maybe Isaiah will give him a little jab back for that. What are you talking about, man? But Likely also had a good play on the day. He caught a long touchdown pass despite getting held. But Mike Green also, the Ravens are working on the screens during 11-on-11s, and the screen game has been pretty not so great for Baltimore over recent seasons, although it was a lot better for them last year. I felt like they had some nice plays on the screen game, but Mike Green was in perfect position to blow up one that was intended for Rasheen Ali. He also stopped LeJounte Wester on a jet sweep as well. So again, these are the types of impacts that we're going to be looking for from these top 2 guys, a la what we saw from Nate Wiggins and Roger Rosengarten last season. It is so valuable for the Ravens, Sam, to have those rookies make those types of $100 million impacts, and they could be well on their way to having the second straight season of that from their first and second round picks.
Yeah, I mean, gets me excited to think about, honestly. And you already know my praise for Malaki Starks. I won't harp on it too much more, but, just normal day in the office for Malaki, doing what he has to do. It's good that he's getting that experience with the tight ends such as Isaiah Likely, because they don't have those tight ends that are built like that in college like that. So good to see that he's going to get some experience with Isaiah Likely, because, he's going to have to deal with those big, fast, tight ends. So good for him to get those reps in. I'm sure those two will have lots and lots of battles in the coming years, I'm sure, in practices. So good for him. As far as Mike Green goes, I'm very, very excited to hear that he's doing well in those end arounds and those screens, because the one knock on him coming out of college was that he was a relentless pursuer, almost to the point where he's caught out of position almost during those misdirections or screens and stuff like that. So good to see that Mike Green is still able to have that tenacity as well as the wherewithal to catch those screens and end arounds before it really articulates into anything serious. It's a good sign for the Ravens to know they have a guy that can count on in those situations moving forward.
Yeah, and for the defense to have the guy, which I think Mike Green can turn into. I know I've mentioned this with you, Sam, but you have TJ Watt on the Steelers, Myles Garrett on the Browns, Trey Hendrickson for now on the Bengals. We'll see how that goes. And then, Mike Green, it feels like he could be that next great AFC North pass rusher with the tools that he has. He's a complete 3-down player, and plays like we're hearing about here from Ryan on these end arounds show that, where he's not just a situational 3rd-down pass rusher, like with the speed to power and his moves, his arsenal, his plan. By the end of, I still remember, Sam, one of my takes in 2023, like my bold prediction was that Zay Flowers is a rookie. It was going to be the Ravens wide receiver 1 by the end of the year. He was their wide receiver 1 by the end of week 1. Like that's how good he was. Mike Green's kind of the same thing here, where Odafe Owe added the pounds on. Kyle Van Noy's been steady for them. I think by the end of the year, Mike Green could be their best pass rusher. Is that a little too bold for me, or are you in line with that?
I'm in line with it. I looked at the stats over the last 2 seasons just to get a good idea of what went right and what went wrong in 2024. In 2023, Jadeveon Clowney, his pass rush win rate was through the roof. It was 26%. I mean, he was one of the best in the league at doing that. In 24, they only had Odafe Owe and Kyle Van Noy. Their pass rush win percentage was about 16, which is like middle of the pack. So the Ravens didn't really have that pass rusher who can win at a consistent basis. They have that now on Mike Green, finding a way to get him on the field. He's a 3-down guy. He's going to be a guy that's going to be there on 1st, 2nd, and 3rd down. So I 100% agree with that. He could be a guy that's starting as the best guy right out the gate if they do so deem him worthy. So it'll be interesting to see how he does in training camp in the preseason and what they do for him during that time space. But he has absolutely got the skill set to rock this defense to its core and get them ready for a championship run, in my opinion. So good problem to have with those 3 guys, but I think Mike Green may be leading the way.
Mike Green is someone that is a consensus top 15 guy on most draft boards. The Ravens, they got to steal him, Mike Green, it feels like, and I'm excited to see how he does. But Malaki Starks also, Sam, talked about how he wants to be coached. And he actually revealed that he got a text from Chuck Pagano at 5:00 a.m. this morning with feedback on film from Thursday's practice. And he said, quote, "That's how I want to be coached. I received that very well. Just being able to have somebody like that in my corner, it's a blessing." We know that a lot of people on this Ravens team, Sam, a lot of people in this organization, they're hard workers, they're relentless, and they want to get better each and every single day. Now, you were on the Malaki Starks train, and I will give you your moment here, because I think for Malaki, this is exactly the mindset, play like a Raven. He aced their interviews. He was a gold or red star guy for them. So it just feels like this fit just becomes more perfect by the day, with more that you hear from Malaki, more that you see Malaki do on the practice field. It feels like Baltimore. And again, he hasn't played a snap, so I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but it feels like they did make a really good decision here.
Oh yeah. 1,000%. You don't think John Harbaugh was happy when he heard him say that in that press conference? You don't think Eric DeCosta breathed a sigh of relief? And you probably already knew already, but hearing that from Malaki Starks, there's the conception that Ravens fans and maybe even NFL fans need to realize, just because you're an NFL player doesn't mean that you practice or are coached the same way as everybody else. There are players out there who don't receive coaching well. They don't practice. They don't look at film every day. You don't have to worry about that with Malaki Starks. You knew that going into the combine. You knew that going into the draft day. You knew that going into OTAs, that Malaki Starks is a guy who eats, breathes, and sleeps football. And you're seeing another example of that right there with his skill set matched with that, mindset, he's going to be a great football player. It's just no doubt about it. I have the same mindset with him that I have with Kyle Hamilton. Does he have the same skill set as Kyle Hamilton, or the measurables, or the athleticism of Kyle Hamilton? No, but the mindset is right there with him. They're going to be a force for the next few years. I'm very excited for the Ravens.
This roster up and down is incredible. They have the potential to maybe add with it, maybe a Jaire Alexander, maybe a Jalen Ramsey, maybe a Justin Simmons. We will see. But Sam, I appreciate you. Thanks for hopping on as always. Before you head out of here, tell people where they can find you and what you're working on.
All right. Yeah. OTAs are winding down. So we'll be talking about that on Ravens Talk Podcast. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at Ravens Talk Podcast. We'll be talking about that. Getting ready for training camp. It's coming up. Before that, I'm sure everybody's worried about mandatory mini camps, who shows up, who performs. So we'll be talking about that as well. So go ahead and check us out.
And be sure to follow Sam, subscribe over there. Links to all his work in the description down below. Sam, I appreciate you as always. And thank you to everybody who watched, tuned in, listened today to Locked On Ravens. We'll be back here tomorrow talking more Ravens as we always do. So be sure on the way out, hit the like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in the subscribe and audio form. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.